you think about, look, Treasury is by nature a very consequence-heavy function. And that's different than most functions within an enterprise. You've got really the art of the possible with AI on one side. At the same time, you have a treasurer that cannot make the mistake of, hey, a payment that should have never been executed.
Welcome to Trade Treasury Payments, the podcast unlocking the future of cross-border finance.
From transaction banking and money movements
to liquidity, treasury, and cash management.
We bring you expert insights and the latest trends shaping global finance.
So, hello everyone. Welcome back to the Trade Treasury Payments podcast. My name is Carter Hoffman. I'm the Trade and Technology Editor at TTP. In pretty much every industry right now, Treasury and cross-border finance certainly included in that, there's a lot of noise about AI, right? Artificial intelligence. So for the past few years, it seems that the focus has really been on kind of automation and making things faster and more efficient. But more and more, especially these days, we're starting to hear that conversation shift towards systems that don't just analyze data or make recommendations, but can actually take actions for themselves. And that's where things start to get really interesting for Treasury, because this has been a function that has traditionally been built around sort of this idea of controls and accountability. So introducing this kind of autonomous technology naturally raises some interesting questions for the industry. So thankfully, we have someone here today who may be able to help us answer some of those questions. So I'm really pleased to be joined today by Mark Johnson, who's the CPO at Ripple Treasury. So Mark, welcome to Trade Treasury Payments.
Thanks, Carter. Happy to be here.
Thank you. So why don't we start off just a quick introduction. Mark, who are you, where are you from, and what do you do?
Yeah, definitely. So like you said, I am at Ripple Treasury. We were officially acquired by Ripple last year, and we have gone through a rebrand, same treasury management platform, now just within the Ripple family. We today are a system for any treasurer to manage cash forecasting, liquidity, risk, payments, connectivity to their bank, all of that fun stuff, and making sure we take off those manual activities and also drive efficiency and overall growth for their firm. I've been in product probably 2 decades now, and fintech, SaaS, enterprise focus, and really excited to just build products, especially in this AI age. So excited to talk about AI within the product. At the same time, it is an active tool that I use, my team uses, our engineering team uses daily to really drive overall new productivity, new technology, and frankly, solve problems that we wouldn't have been able to solve years ago. So excited to talk more about it today and get into the meat of Treasury and AI.
Amazing. Thank you. So before we get into the meat of it all, I think it's important to take a step back, because obviously, AI gets talked about all the time now. And with that, there's, a lot of confusion, misconceptions out there about what it is, specifically what agentic AI actually is, because a lot of people might not have that firsthand familiarity. So before we move into things, can you just quickly, define what agentic AI means, specifically for you, maybe in this Treasury context? What is this?
Yeah, no, it's a great question, and it's always good to take a step back here. And as I've spent really the last 12 months talking to treasurers, talking to CFOs in this space, a few things have really started to present themselves. Number one, the acceleration of having conversations with vendors, TMS and other vendors alike, on AI capabilities. And it's usually the same question. What does AI do for me? What does it do in my environment? What does it do with the messiness of data that I have to comb through each day? And it's interesting in the sense that there is still skepticism, and I think that's rational. When you think about, look, Treasury is by nature a very consequence-heavy function, and that's different than most functions within an enterprise. You've got really the art of the possible with AI on one side. At the same time, you have a treasurer that cannot make the mistake of, hey, a payment that should have never been executed, or a breach and risk that should have never been allowed, or a liquidity event that could cause a significant disruption because AI went all the way without the treasurer actually being able to see that motion. So there's definitely a balancing act in how treasurers, the office of the CFO in general, is looking at AI when they see so much of it in front of them. I think to your point as well, there is this interesting spectrum of what is AI. And, I always have to go back to everybody is going to approach this at a different stage of their journey. And in particular, within the finance realm, finance is used to automation. I think that's a fair point where CFOs, treasurers see the value of something that is rules-based, something that is deterministic. And that can be something as simple as, look, I got to protect against fraud and payments. And that can be done with and without AI. AI could be an additive, but at the same point, you can drive a lot of value by being able to set up rules and logics from preventing payment fraud. So I like to think about first, hey, within AI, you have that automation piece, which may or may not include AI. The second piece is analytics. And again, if I think to where we've had a recent client conference just a year ago, and we polled the audience. We're like, talk to us about how you're using AI if you're using AI today. We had one person who talked about Microsoft Power BI. They're like, hey, look, I use this AI tool. Well, there was no AI in that tool, at least at that particular time, but it just shows you, hey, everyone is at a very different playing field. Consumers obviously drive like early adoption when it comes to ChatGPT, and we had that huge moment over the last few years, but enterprises are still catching up, especially within the finance function. So as we think about, you've got automation, you've got just better analytics through tools like BI tools, then you start to step up into really where I think most of the market is today, which is more generative AI. And it's, hey, how can AI help synthesize a large data set and then be able to come back with a summary, come back with a narrative that explains what this data is telling the end user. And that's what I think most people mean today when they have true AI within the product. It is more generative in nature. It's, hey, I have to prompt AI, thus it's reactive, which is not a bad thing by any means. There's still tremendous value in generative AI. And then to the final piece, just to oversimplify this, agentic AI is definitely that next stair step in the process. And the way I like to think about agentic AI, more specific to finance, is imagine kind of like that eager intern that is constantly monitoring something. That could be monitoring simply currency fluctuation, but they are doing it on a 24/7 basis. They are detecting something conditional has changed, and that condition is now either positively or negatively impacting my existing risk policy. And by first being able to see that in real time, that's kind of like that first step of the agentic experience. The second step is, again, where generative AI can also start to blend, but it's, what does that mean now that that's happened? And then finally, the most common definition, I think, when it comes to agentic AI is, okay, based on all of this, what is the next step? And am I going to take that next step in the process? So actually getting into the point where an agent is performing an action on behalf of that user, so that user doesn't have to be the one who is actually executing. I think there is a lot just in that one summary of agentic AI that adds complexity. Again, huge value there, but there are a lot of dependencies to make that a successful model for let alone an enterprise company, treasury and finance, they have to get it right.
Awesome. Thanks, Mark. So a lot of times when we talk about technologies, you can think of them as either being kind of like an incremental step change or some massive, leap in the capabilities of the tool. Where would you rank agentic AI, perhaps compared to, typical Gen AI, and then, AI in general compared to what treasurers might traditionally use?
Yeah, I think foundationally, it is the easiest way to start with more generative AI. As a treasurer, as a CFO, it's interesting. Like I have a parallel with how digital assets are being reviewed and evaluated in the treasury space to similar with AI, two very emerging technologies that both have huge potential, but you have to start with trying and piloting and testing so that you can bring awareness to the rest of your organization. Just like we want more employees within our own company using AI, we have to help them along that adoption curve. And we have to show them value, which showing value with generative AI is an easier path before you get to agentic AI, where you take more of a back seat. Yes, in my mind, you should always be in the loop, but it is a different model. It is a different application. Now, with that being said, I do truly believe it is a massive stair-step function and capability that will unlock tremendous value for the office of the CFO in general. And there are different layers to it. And really, as we're having more and more conversations, we've tried to simplify it based on, hey, how do you look at the technology today? How do you balance it with what a day-to-day treasurer's activity looks like? So, simple example, we've started to rally around this concept of, hey, I need to monitor something. That monitoring is kind of the starting point, and that's where an agent can take physical activity off of a user within a platform. And then the interpretation piece. It's okay, that can take hours just by themselves, let alone days, to synthesize all this information and also just prepare it into a format that maybe I need to get sign off on. And again, that's an added step in the process. Even before you get to the agent acting, there is so much time spent on actually in real time uncovering an issue or an item that's about to be an issue, and then presenting it back in a format that a wide audience can understand. We've started workshopping with certain customers where, look, we just mapped your current process, and your current process could be hopping in a TMS, hopping out into Excel, hopping back into the TMS, hopping into an email, hopping into a PowerPoint. Like all of that is just a time drain on the team that could have been used to spend toward more strategic activities. So to your question on kind of like the stair step, fully agree, because I think the stair step is get me out of the mundane activities that are very tedious, that take so much of the week away, and now refocus my time on something more strategic that can have a bigger impact on our company. It isn't just kind of table stakes, run the business type model.
Right. So when you say we're, I suppose, releasing an agent to do certain tasks, like what does that actually mean? What does that look like when I sit down at my desk at my computer? Like what am I doing to allow this agent to go and do these? Like,
yeah, no, it's a great question. So, and this is, I'll give you kind of an example of where we started, and should be pretty applicable for most listeners here. But cash forecasting, if you take the concept of cash forecasting, the issue is not usually being able to harness all of the data around being able to create the right forecast and do so on a regular basis. It's more the process side of doing this repetitively. And then the fact that you could be a company that has 1,000 or more entities across the globe, And you could have very different business models per entity that you're trying to manage. So when we started the journey, we began with cash forecasting, and we said, okay, let's walk through your process today. And again, like other TMS systems in the world, or other just cash forecasting tools in the world, there is value in being able to obviously produce a good forecast based on the data at hand. Now, the work comes into how do you continue to enhance that over time? And we learned through our customers that variance analysis part of the process is the most tedious. Like, hey, the system can help you generate the forecast that much faster, but now it goes back to where agentic AI shines, and it's like, okay, you created this forecast for this week. You've got 10 other business units that are creating their own forecasts. Now you need to go and look at what did the forecast look like last week? How did it perform against actuals? How has my 13-week changed and adjusted? Just imagine you are the person responsible for consolidating all of that, and you're like, geez, this is just giving me a headache. Like, I can't even figure out how to get started. So now you can say, okay, all the forecasts are in the system. I can have AI go and run the analysis on my behalf. And I might not even have to trigger the AI to do that. It just knows, hey, all the forecasts have been submitted. It is like event driven in the world of technical architecture. And because it's event driven, it knows to go review those forecasts. And by the way, because the data lives in the same place, it knows to go and look back at prior forecast submissions to know, hey, is there any anomaly that might have occurred? Because I did not have it physically documented, but the AI caught it, and now it has learned from that anomaly. And now it's no longer an anomaly. Like, hey, look, this is something you should go ahead and forecast for. Like, this has become more of a normal occurrence. And that type of stuff, like you would have been doing in spreadsheets, or you just would have missed it altogether. So now, like, you have this co-pilot almost to the side of your monitor, helping you with that type of analysis. And in the most exciting part, in my mind, is it's learning as you go. And if you make notes, it captures those notes. If you've accepted it, it captures that. So it knows, and it's not being repetitive in the sense of, hey, I forgot this history before. Now I have to go and perform that activity again. So it's getting better as you generate more and more forecasts in that scenario.
Awesome, thank you. Let's switch gears a little bit and talk specifically more about the Treasury function. And I guess the question I'll lead with is, like, what are some of those main areas within Treasury that I suppose are particularly right for a tool like this to come in and benefit and change those workflows?
Yeah. So cash forecasting is where we started. We saw parallel, obviously, in other areas of the platform. And one of the ones that we saw was in risk. And that's kind of like where we landed next. And if you think about it, risk, when it comes to managing debt, managing equities, managing foreign exchange risk, because, hey, I'm a global company and I have payments occurring cross-border, vendors, payroll, you name it. And we started to see our customers almost pushing us toward risk in that scenario. They're like, hey, there is a natural relationship to my forecast being as accurate as it can be based on how well have I managed risk within my company and how much data is being utilized back into that forecast. So that was the second piece that we really started to dive into. And as we think about risk, it's a similar problem where, hey, Treasury teams are managing all of this data, and that data has to be consumed from trading platforms, from market intel, from your bank, your ERP, again, a lot of different places. And that may result in a lot of great charts, a lot of great tables, a lot of great presentations. And you may feel good. Like think of like I always equate this to like vanity metrics. When it's like, look, the metrics may look good on the surface, but do they actually tell you anything? And
Hey, enjoying this podcast? Hit that follow button for more. Done? Let's get back to it.
these charts and tables are created, but the overall policy compliance is buried underneath. And our customers don't really know where to go look to see, hey, how do I know if there's actually been a breach? And these charts and tables look great, but how are they actually speaking toward what I have set up on my 100, 200 page risk document, along with what's going on in the market, along with what's going on in our business? And these breaches were just being caught too late, and the ability to act was just way behind. So we started with similar design and front end experience. I think this part is key, but we have to make sure our customers transparently know AI is helping in the situation. And for us to really help bend the adoption curve in a positive way, we need to make sure the look and feel, the content itself, that AI is enabled, is all presented front and center to that customer. And we made sure from a product design perspective that what we built in our forecasting solution would be similar to risk, although different modeling, different data set. But again, sometimes you have the same user or users that are in both. You definitely have a treasurer who's going to care about both. So that particular person wants to understand, hey, the same level of thought and process was built together. So that concept of surfacing anomalies or breaches, similar. Being able to create a generative response narrative on what happened, and then finally, like the more agentic part of what do I need to do about it. Like those pieces hold true in risk and cash forecasting. So we saw a natural parallel there. What's further interesting, and we're kind of scratching the surface here, but there are parts of the process that obviously continue. And when I think about forecasting as an example, you still have the issue of a person has to submit a forecast, even if you wanted to use AI to fully submit a forecast. And I'll tell you, like our customers are like, no, at this point, but you still have a person submitting it, and they still have 10 different things on their plate. And we saw an opportunity to say, like, okay, what if we created a chaser agent that could actually go directly to that responsible user for that business unit's forecast and understand or provide knowledge to them that, hey, your forecast is due on this date. This is what you submitted last week. This is what we talked about from variance analysis. It's set up for you. Make sure you go and review it, and it's done by this date. So that just mentality, like as we all know, when we snooze things on our meeting invites or leave things unread in Slack or Teams, like it's the same concept, but now you just have AI doing it for you in context in the moment. And that is helping nudge and drive up forecast submissions, which is also helping drive up forecast accuracy. So I think that's the most exciting part. Like we can launch new AI experiences in different solutions. At the same time, we can start in a solution and continue to capture more of that end-to-end experience where it feels connected. And it's the fun, but it's also the challenging part of the world we live in. How do you take this great technology and make it usable for this particular function?
Mm-hmm. Well, and I mean, given that challenge, especially I'd imagine for a lot of smaller treasury teams that don't necessarily have the resource to put, like whether it's, human hours to be able to put into researching some of these things, like what would you recommend a team like that start with first if this is their first time ever dipping their toe in the AI world?
Yeah, I think there's an interesting piece here. Like the ones I mentioned are good test subjects where it's kind of basic agentic, where to the point where you still have to take action. Like agents are doing certain things on your behalf, But at the end of the day, like we're not going to allow the system to submit anything for you yet. Who knows where we get when we get to that point, but it's doing a lot of the grunt work for you. There's a second piece that we've started to work on, and it's to implement any SaaS product. It obviously takes time. It takes time for the team, the vendor in the scenario that is implementing. It takes time for the user and customer that has, let's say, ERPs all across that need to be configured to support the system. So we've started to look at during that implementation process, where can AI start to really help speed up a customer's time to value? And if something would have taken, let's say, a month or two to get implemented on before, how do we challenge ourselves to make that 50% less? And then that gives our customers a quicker time to value. So in some cases, we may actually have AI running in the background where a customer doesn't have to do anything. It has become a tool within our implementation team. And our implementation team has an opportunity to start to talk about with the customer, hey, by the way, this is how we eat our own dog food. And I think that's another way to really get started. We don't want our customers to feel like, hey, they're in a void, they're in a black box of using AI. Like we want our whole company to be able to talk about how we're using it, how we make sure it's secure, how we make sure like even our own teams transparently know what AI is doing in the background. And I think being able to do that also drives that trust factor with our customers that look, we have spent the time and we will continue to spend the time to make sure this is set up and it's configured right for you, just like it's done for our own employees to make your life better within the system.
Awesome. So let's switch gears a little bit and talk about some of the barriers that are facing agentic AI in Treasury today. So, I mean, you sort of hinted at some of the company level barriers that might exist, but what are some of the more, I guess, almost systemic things that are blocking this from becoming like a widespread tool?
It's another great question, and I do think there are a lot of items at hand. Like we know today, within enterprises, still lacking the adoption curve that consumers have, and it really comes down to a few key things. Number one is data. Like there is a data foundational problem, and AI cannot outperform the data it's using to run on at the end of the day. If you think about a treasury environment, data is typically fragmented, it's inconsistently structured, it's coming from multiple ERPs, sometimes ERPs that are in different regional instances. You've got bank statements that are coming in all different types of formats. A TMS may or may not be fully integrated to all of those. And that's nowhere near the data model that AI, let alone agentic AI, needs to be successful. So when it comes to that data foundation, quality and accessibility are absolutely critical to getting the results you expect to get from AI. We personally made a pretty significant investment in our data infrastructure, partnering with Databricks to kind of build a more unified Treasury data platform. And I'm glad we did that. I'm glad we did that a little bit ahead of the curve because it would have been painful for us to try to do it now. So that is an absolutely critical piece. I think the second goes back to security. And at the end of the day, we are seeing it in RFPs. We are seeing it talking to prospects. More and more questions are obviously starting to pop up around, hey, what does this look like when it comes to the European Union AI Act? What does this mean for GDPR? What does this mean for how the rest of the platform is set up from a data perspective? And dozens of questions that are hitting on those types of topics. So from a positive standpoint, that's showing, hey, look, I'm interested. I just need to understand how you are approaching these items. So then I can go back to my team and review responses. I'll tell you, like a year ago, we were not seeing those level of questions because people weren't even ready to get started. Now they're ready to get started and they've started to do their homework. which I think is a great thing. So when it comes to evaluating vendors, like these are questions you should be asking, because you see so many products in the market that are more wrappers, where workflows are being created outside of a proprietary system, and those workflows are in the public market. Data is being shared publicly. And the last thing you want is financial data to be in those markets and not being contained within your own walls. So I think that's probably the second biggest piece, and it's where we are spending a lot of time too, just to make sure, hey, our customers understand where we stand in this process. And number two, they're given enough information to go back to their teams, and we're available to answer questions. That I think will be the other unlock, getting enterprises, treasurers confident in which solutions they're using that are AI enabled.
Awesome. So we kind of led this off by saying that, obviously everyone's talking about AI right now, particularly the last little while. It's been agentic AI that's come up. Do you think that the market is overestimating the potential that AI has, or like, are there any specific areas where you hear people talk about it, where you're maybe a little hesitant, saying, "Hey, that's not necessarily the best use case"? Like, what do you think from that side?
Yeah, I think the hype is real. I think the structure around it still needs work, because if I think back to a prior industry I was in, which was project management, and within project management, it's a little bit more deterministic in the sense of, hey, when I'm assigning people to a project, there are clear data patterns that I'm going to want to pull in to say these are the best resources for this particular project. They're available, their margin is right, and they have the right skills. It can be as simple as that. And you can build models around that. You can use AI to explain like why this resource Sally over resource Joe. But when it comes to Treasury, you have the added complication of financial data at the end of the day, and being able to consume and ingest all of that information. And that's like a blessing and a curse. It's a blessing because I think the opportunity within the office of the CFO is much higher than, for instance, in the professional services industry, because of all that data and because of how unstructured a lot of it is. At the same time, it requires any vendor, any software that participates in the space to devote the necessary time to support the infrastructure, not just where it is today, but where it's going. Like, hey, if you think about, again, the EU AI Act, it's more of a design focus on governance, on transparency, on making sure every user knows what they're getting into. It's only a matter of time before that rolls out to other regions, to other countries. And if I give any perspective here, it's like, hey, as you're looking at this, make sure that the companies you're considering are holding themselves to those standards, which will become more of a norm over time. And I think the last thing that really gets interesting is, as you think about, again, the hype is real, and we are still pretty early stages in being able to think about, like, in development, we can create agents that work together in the sense of code writing, testing, deploying, reviewing, each one with a very specific skill. You can start to look at a world where, hey, treasurers have this team underneath them that is helping to drive productivity returns back to their existing team, and they are working across functions, and they're able to see everything that is specific to their organization and do it all within one place where the data plumbing exists, the policies that the company has built exist. And once you have that, I think that's where we start to see true energy around kind of taking that next step in the adoption curve. Again, but it has to start with something that feels natural, something that can prove an early win and value case. and then you can start to step into that. I think some companies may be jumping too far within our own space and not thinking about like all of the ramifications of how's this actually going to work from a data plumbing perspective, or how's it actually going to adhere everything I've set up with my risk and my board, and that cannot be lost. So it's again kind of this blessing and curse of where we are within the early stages, which are still early, of AI. I mean, you follow Claude as an example, and like there's a new update every week, and there's new materials getting presented, and it's to continue to get better. Just like, hey, if you don't start now, you're at a bad situation because the time to catch up is increasing so quickly. So it's good to at least start to get familiar with some of the basic use cases so that you're ready when the technology is ready for the more expansive use cases.
And I mean, speaking about kind of expansive use cases, what do you think is realistically possible in this space in, say, the next 1 to 2 years?
Yeah, we've seen tremendous opportunity in getting AI into specific workflows. Where we see the next evolution is, okay, you've got AI in these different experiences, but how do you govern across all these different experiences at the same time? So you can just imagine, hey, if I've got, call it 100 users, those 100 users are using 10 different AI experiences. Who is actually governing that? And how do you have visibility to it? So I think the next evolution is, how can the executive team, the leaders of the organization, see what AI is actually producing from an ROI perspective? How can they actually monitor that the people who should have access and should be using are using on a regular basis, and the ones that aren't are not? So if you think about where we believe the market is going, there's this whole orchestration level of a body that can start to provide visibility into all the agents that are within the system. And the interesting thing is, if you think about agents here, it also challenges how we think about product development, and that everything that makes sense to become event driven starts to drive so much more value. So Treasury has typically run on batch schedules, and now with a architecture that is more event driven, AI responds 10 times better in those scenarios. It can drive so much more value because you're not waiting on, hey, run this report every Monday. Instead, you're like, run this report if something has changed. And I think that is the true unlock here. But to get to that point, you have to think about, how does the transparency work in that scenario where you have all these experiences now intertwined in a system, so that no one loses sight to a decision that should have been approved before it was executed. A person who should not have had access was contained before giving access to them. So all of that fun stuff, you don't want to just build features just to build AI features. Like, you have to think about the solving the orchestration problem at the same time. And to do that, you also have to think about how the architecture works in the platform, and the right architecture that really drives more and more value with AI.
Awesome, thank you. So I know we're almost out of time here, but before we wrap up, I want to give you a chance to get one final word out there. So if you could get a short message out to as many, clients, stakeholders, people that are just interested in the space in general, if you could get that short message out to as many people as you could, what would that be? And I
yeah. What I've really thought about recently is, Treasury is not getting easier. Like, if you think about companies, they are managing more business units and entities. They have more banking relationships. Regulatory pressure is increasing across jurisdictions. Currency exposure is really raising as more companies either are hiring in different countries, and paying in different countries or paying third parties in different countries or setting up just natural growth in new organizations, acquiring companies in different geographies. And when you think about all of that management, that is entirely too much to try to continue doing that manually. Even with a more automated system, you're still not able to drive as much productivity that you want. So I think AI is the unlock there, and I think the takeaway message for me is just getting started with it. You will learn so much by just testing the waters, and by doing that, I think it challenges your vendors to earn your trust. Like if you have questions, ask them. If something doesn't make sense to you, ask them. And they're in it just as much as you, or they should be. And I think that that's the crucial part of this. Like no one has the playbook because it's greenfield. Like it's an emerging technology, and all the major LLMs out there are learning as we all are as users of the technology. But the key is starting, because that opens the doors for you. And as a product person, like we live and breathe for that feedback. We like to hear, hey, look, I used it. I saw this great value. Oh, and by the way, I was thinking about this over here too. Is this something where AI can come in? And those are the questions that I think are going to make a real difference, and making the consumers of the software and the software company itself building a stronger relationship as we go.
Amazing. Thanks, Mark. So yeah, Treasury is not getting easier. So why would we not get out there and use this incredible new tool that can help us work through that as much as we can?
Definitely.
We kind of talked through the basics of agentic AI, defined what it is, walked through some of those challenges that treasurers face and how this new tool can come in and help address some of those challenges. We talked about some of the constraints that we face in implementing these, and then we talked about cutting through some of that hype and really what some of those next steps could be to build towards that future that we want to see. So Mark, thank you so much for being here on Trade Treasury Payments.
No, thank you, Carter. It was very enjoyable.
And don't forget to follow Trade Treasury Payments
on your favorite podcast platform.
Thanks for listening.